Hello and welcome to IEEE Soft Robotics Podcast. In this podcast, we're going to interview researchers from both academia and industry about their work, thoughts, spectrum, and more beyond that. This is Marwa Edwini, and I hope you will find this podcast useful. If you would like to connect with us, simply send us, and we will be happy to hear from you. And here is my interview. Thanks.
I would like to ask you first how you would like to introduce and define yourself for the audience who first time listening to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I would say that anyone to define themselves, it's a little bit hard, I guess, but I'm, in a few words, I would say I'm a human rights lawyer, and I'm a tech learner. I would also say that as well. And I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland, and I work in human rights around the world. So, but I'd say before any of that, I'm a human being. I'm a human, member of the human species. So on the species level, and I'm a family member also. I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, and I'm a big reader. And that's probably enough to start with.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we always ask this podcast about the childhood. I'm curious about your childhood.
Right.
How was your childhood?
I think that I saw that question. I think that's funny. What a great question. I would say that it was filled with books. From a really early age, I was reading a lot and never really stopped. So I was always always like from, I think, very early on interested in learning and reading. And my childhood was, I would say, also a bit, on the strict side. I would say, like, my family, we didn't have so much access to TV all the time, and we ate really healthy food. Like, there were long times where we didn't eat white sugar, and my family was kind of like in this health food craze back in the 70s. But now those things are kind of also coming back around, like, so yeah, I would say it was filled with curiosity and books, and kind of on the healthy side. And also I was outside a lot, like all the time. I was really lucky. I could always be outside in nature and have access to like trees and really connect with nature a lot, which is a blessing. So
I'm curious what kind of reading or books inspired you as a child. What kind of books you inspired?
I read a lot of different things. I had a big family, I still do, and so I kind of got whatever books were around from everybody, being on the younger side of that. And really a lot, like anything fiction, nonfiction, just a lot of different things. But one of the things that I remember really well is like reading biographies of women. There were a few special books that I loved, which I would also encourage young girls to read, like biographies of women. And one was about Marie Curie, written by her daughter, Eve. And I was fascinated by her life as a scientist and as a woman, in her particular political situation and like her whole story. So there were several biographies of really interesting women that I remember reading as a girl.
Wonderful. So I'm curious about how you got interested in being a human rights lawyer. And you're the founder of Rights Tech Women. But how you first of all get interested that I want to be a human rights lawyer? How you get to that?
Yeah, I got to that because I was actually studying literature before that, and I started studying post-colonial theory. So, learning about structures that had been in place around the world, for centuries. And then I decided to go into this, instead of being in a, say, ivory tower, just reading good books all day, I was like, let me get more involved and get into international law. although there's nothing wrong with being in a tower probably and reading good books all day, but but I thought I should study law, and in particular international law. So I really wanted to learn more about decolonization and international law, and kind of that's why I went to law school, was really to study international law. And then within international law, human rights is kind of a part of international law. So I kind of just gravitated towards the human rights courses and the internships and everything, because I don't know, I connected with it. Yeah, it's just something about it called me, I guess. I don't know. It's a little bit like that.
Interesting. Yeah. So if you can tell us, the audience, what's actual human rights is before going any details. What is human rights is?
Yeah. Human rights, people like to say there's something you have just because you're human. You know, it's not something that you have to necessarily like earn or, you know, have given to you. It's like, by the very fact that you're human, you are entitled to these rights and freedoms. So people would say it's a collection of like rights and freedoms. I know it uses the same term in the definition, rights, but it's a collection of rights and freedoms of things that really talk about your experience in the world. So it's like how you should be treated as a human being, just because of the fact that you're a human being, and what other people kind of have to do and also cannot do when they interact with you, when they treat you a certain way. So it's like a set of rights and entitlements that you have because you're human. Everyone has them, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, and ultimately the things that are the entity most responsible for making sure that you enjoy those rights is the government. So when it comes down to it, they're ultimately in the way we have in our international law system today. The government is the one who is ultimately responsible for how people are getting treated. You know, are they getting treated to this certain minimum level of treatment, and are they getting the freedoms that they're entitled to, that they were born with, because they're human. So, and it has another thing about, you know, another important part of that is the fact that everybody deserves them equally. You know, it doesn't matter where you are, your sex, your you know, your nationality, your you know, your disability, whether you come from indigenous heritage, you know, or any other status. Like, based on the very fact that you're a human, you all have the same rights. We all have the same rights. So what I love is helping people connect with their rights and find out exactly what those are, like in more detail, and know what they are, what they look like, where they're written down. It's kind of helpful to know everyone where are these things written down. How do I access these rights? And what do I do if it's not being respected? How do I go about, you know, going through a process somewhere to change things? Yeah. So something people have because they're human is the short answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. But maybe a quick question here: how far we are from what you define? Do you think? Yeah, of course we still, but if you, as a lawyer, and you see that, how far we are from that?
Oh, right. That's a great question. We are a species in progress, and you know, every country has things that it can do better. Like literally every country in the world. There's no country that has it perfect. So we have quite some distance to go to make sure that everybody enjoys the same level of rights everywhere. Even in one country, you can pick any country, and literally there are problems there for sure. But obviously there's more distance to go, you know, in some countries on some issues as compared to other countries. But one thing that I'm so excited about doing, for example, with my organization, is helping people learn from practices, learn from data, and hopefully not reinvent the wheel over and over. You know, so that if somebody has solved a particular human rights problem somewhere else, maybe we can all learn from that and see how could we come up with a solution that would work in another context to deal with that same type of problem that's come up before. But yeah, to answer your question, we are very far, but I'm encouraged, and I will always be optimistic, no matter what kind of news you read, how bad it is, what's happening. And certainly, I do think we're at a moment in time where there's a lot happening, but it's actually been this way for a long time. You know, in different countries around the world, we have so many big problems, right? But frankly, it's not new. You know, this is not like a surprise to human rights lawyers that we're kind of where we are today. Things have been going in a way for a while that have not always been a good way. So there's a lot to do. Basically, we have so much to do, but we have better tools than ever today to help address those problems, and we've learned a lot. So, you know, if we can just get people interested in the same questions, talking about the same problems, and learning from each other, you know, we can basically have the conversations that we need to have and start getting the resources where we need to get them to make those changes. But we have to also find out from everybody who's in that situation. Like, we have to learn from the people who are experiencing, you know, dramatic differences in their treatment. You know, we have to learn from them to find out what do they need, you know, because they're the best ones to know what they need and what is not working. But where we can help them is by helping give them information about what it should look like, or what it can look like when somebody else solves this problem. So yeah, basically, I just really want to put people together and have them help people who need changes made get information that they need, and help them get in touch with other people who can help them make those changes. I think we can be one of them, but also certainly not the only. And then help people talk with their governments also about, you know, how can we make progress basically on the issues that we identify based on international standards. So yeah, it's a lot to do, but I'm ready.
I appreciate your honest answer. Thank you. I like that. Yeah. But maybe I'm curious about, I think your story is interesting because how you get interested in STEM as you working as an international here and rights lawyer. How you get interested in STEM? Why?
So many reasons. But I first became interested in this intersection between human rights and technology from a work point of view, because I actually started to work in a project where I was helping people who were human rights defenders learn about some technology tools that they could use in their work to make their work more productive and more efficient, and to report on violations that were so widespread that they needed a big database to actually keep track of those type of violations. So I started working in this project to help get them training. So it was this intersection of tech and human rights, but actually also getting people training on like information security, and you know, what do you do when the government breaks into your office and steals your computers? You know, if you're a human rights organization, you know, human rights defenders are facing a lot of challenges daily around the world, and there are people who are starting to work at this area of like, how can we help them make their work better and safer? So actually, that's how I kind of first got into it. But then I decided to do this project because I had also been working on gender for years, and I was like thinking about how much I wanted to work on gender for the next sort of big chapter in my work. And I was thinking, what could be where I could make the most difference for women, I hope, around the world, where, you know, what could be like the single most topic where I could have the most impact to change women's situation for the better. And I came to the conclusion, after I thought about it for a really long time, actually, but I concluded that actually for women, education and employment in STEM could be where I could make the most impact, I hoped, and I still hope. Why? Because, women have faced so many challenges around the world, which I've had the pleasure to work with women from literally all around the globe and hear about their situations. And, for different reasons, I think that helping women to get more access to tech training, it can help women get access to education and jobs, and also give them tools to be able to use to stand up for their own rights. So I concluded like, I want to work at this intersection of like training girls and women on technology, and STEM, but also on human rights education. So I was like, if we put those together, I think this will be where we can affect the lives, I hope, of a lot of girls and women, so that they can get access to the jobs that are there today. I mean, it's already, the workplace has already changed so much.
Yeah.
And help them get access to the jobs of tomorrow for sure. Because there are all these studies about, the jobs that are going to be in the future, like, 68, 70% of them haven't been created yet. We don't know what those jobs are even going to be. Tech is changing so much, so really the workplace is changing. And because of the fact that women are so underrepresented still, even in the countries where we think it might be better, it's not. That was something else that we learned. It's actually a global problem, like underrepresentation of women in STEM. There is something to improve everywhere. So for those reasons, I was like, let's bring together human rights and tech education for girls and women. And based on data, we picked a bunch of countries that we want to work in based on different criteria. But I'm excited because I think that if we together build this network of women who are empowered on, using tech and also about their own rights, I think this can be a really good agent for change. To help. It's like it's a virtuous circle. Like I think if the more women we get interested in tech education and then also about their rights, it's like I think that this will help them get other women, empowered and be able to have access to what they need.
Yeah. I really like this point, but maybe you can go for this point again. But before that, how was it easy for you to found Rights Tech Women? I'm curious about the challenges to start something, and what kind of challenge you faced at the beginning to start this organization?
Yeah, I faced definitely all the challenges that anybody faces in any startup. I think sort of rather, I'm optimistic as I said, but I think maybe I thought it would be a bit quicker in some ways, and okay, it's actually everything to do. So I think one of the challenges, there are a few key things to take care of, obviously, like deciding what you want to do, your mission, what is it you're really trying to change. For us, we're trying to change women and girls in education and employment by 2030. That's what we have come to conclude. But so it's figuring out what you want to do, also figuring out what you don't want to do, ruling things out. Like, we're not going to be the NGO that helps get girls into school. We're not going to do everything, basically. Like, there are other NGOs that work on that. So we're going to probably focus more with girls who are already attending school, for example. So also seeing what's out there and where you can add value, right? As people say. So we, it's like figuring out your mission, what you want to do, what you don't want to do, building a team. That's super fun though, actually. You can, you meet people and you find people who are just as passionate about you. It's so lucky to have this amazing team that I put together, also with the help of other people who come in. So building a team, I'd say it's a challenge, but I've been lucky. Funding, critical issue to anybody. At this stage now, we are looking for the funding that'll help us do the project for the next years. So that's a big issue, especially in the current climate. It's a bit tricky. So we're always looking for partnerships that'll help us do that. And I would say just starting, like just not being afraid to jump in. You can kind of plan and make lists and think about it, but like, you're like, oh, should I do this? Am I ready? I think just going for it and literally starting is like important for the whole startup mentality. So you kind of have to let go of like, oh, we'll do this thing until it's perfect, and then it will be perfect, and then we will move on and do the next thing, and it will be perfect. Like that just doesn't happen that same way. Like, yes, you have a good high level of quality that everyone needs to reach for things, but with limited resources to cover everything that you really need to do in starting a whole organization, there's a lot to do. So I think if someone's out there thinking about founding something, I would say to you, yes, go for it. Think about it, but just start. That's also a challenge, and continue. I would say just start and don't stop. Those are two very important things. Very basic, but don't give up. So start someday and then just don't quit. So that's where I am right now anyway.
That's very, very inspiring. But maybe here the question, Ellen, some people could argue about, okay, we know that we have an issue for women or underrepresented in general. And of course, it's as you say, that it's different from country to country, and still, there's a lot of work to do. But maybe I'm curious to ask you, what could be missing for this kind of research or like outreach? Because we know fact that we have this unconscious bias towards women, and sometimes I know some story. I'm not making again a sweeping generalization, but some people face like this kind of bullying or unconscious bias, and it's just kind of ingrained in sometimes even women towards women, they have this kind of action, not only opposite gender. But I'm not really expert as you, and that's why I'm asking you, what do you think is still lacking? Is this an education, early stage of education, for example? This problem comes from?
I would disagree and say you probably are more of an expert than me, since you are a woman who's been working in that field. But I think we really need to learn from people's experiences and kind of find out what's happening and what works. And I hope basically just find ways to share information between organizations and between countries, and start to consider this as a human rights issue. I think that where we might be lacking on some information is like a basic understanding that you kind of refer to about in the workplace. What does it mean when someone says this type of bullying thing, or this type of harassment? I think what might be missing, and where I hope to really fill the gap, is by educating people. They don't start from scratch. Everyone knows something about their own rights to start with, but talking with people to educate them more about which actual like human rights are involved, like which rights are we talking about that are at issue here, and just help everybody in the workplace have a better understanding of those rights, and what they should look like when it goes well. I think that might be part of what's missing, is like a shared understanding of like, where are we trying to go from here? Where are we now? And like, I think we're actually missing a shared understanding of that as well. From the point of view of different people, maybe in the workplace, but and like you say, not only men. I heard interesting talk about that from a scientist at an event at the UN not long ago, who was talking about that. But it's I think where resources seem limited to women, it changes the environment. And even if there's just the perception that resources are limited, it can change how people feel like they need to behave in certain environments. But I really think that I hope we can help by just talking with people and getting their stories out there, and just also finding out what was done to change that, and what was the step that was taken, even on a very small level. Like, what are small things that people can take as steps to transform something that might be conflict into a better situation that's like healthier for everybody. And I think that, getting, like, I really want to know what the problems are, but on a big level and on a very granular level, so that we can like get information to people and I hope give them new options, like give them new choices to take in the workplace. So that's where I would start. But yeah, I think I would say human rights based research on on women's situations in STEM employment, for example. Like that's something I think we are adding, is like looking at this as like, there are all these initiatives that are really amazing around the world about getting girls into coding, getting women into science. There are so many things like this which are great. And I think that where we can, I hope, help is like by also adding vocabulary about human rights. Being like, yes, we are talking about equality when we're talking about getting girls to code and making sure they can get jobs. But like, let's also talk about the fact that it's literally a human right to get, the access to education, and also that science education is a part of your right to education. I think we're missing a lot of vocabulary in the discussions that are happening so far. But what I'm just really enjoying doing now is like, I hope giving the different sides the tools that the other sides need. So like the human rights side can use so many tools from tech, and I think that the tech side and the STEM employment side, I think they could also similarly use some tools from the human rights side. So it's pretty exciting. It's a different way to approach it, like from a human rights point of view, but to say that women's representation in STEM education and employment, it's not only about you're having the right to get jobs in the future, but it's also literally, it's like part of your rights. And I think that whereas girls and women in so many places might have been told that it's not a space for them, it's a matter of like changing the perception of really everyone involved, to make people understand that as a matter of human rights, it's everyone's space. It's also my space. I mean, it's everybody's space. So yeah.
I really think this point. I'm also maybe here the question about maybe the role of education. Do you think the way we educate the kids at early ages, for example, we sometimes lack this kind of basic stuff that we need later on in life? And also another interesting aspect about taking risk or starting like a startup, for example, because there's a stereotype that everyone is going in the same direction. There's only one direction, and if you consider something outside mainstream, it will be not accepted or just scary, like starting a startup, for example, or being a woman and want to do a new ideas. And sometimes it's something still scary to society. I don't know if you have this kind of stores like that or you face something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking back to when I really very first started this, and there is a lot of thing that you have the possibility to be scared about a lot of things, because you're like, is this going to work? Should I do this? I don't know. What if it doesn't work? What if I look stupid? All those things. But I think one of the most helpful things that I have changed and that I kind of learned as I went along in the process is start learning, make mistakes, and keep going. And just like the willingness to make mistakes and mess up and keep trying something, I think that's also part of the benefit of scientific thinking, that actually we need to valorize, and that other people can really learn from, like taking this idea of like, you experiment, if it doesn't work, you try it again and break it down into smaller pieces, and then see what didn't work and what did work. And I think that for like solving problems in your life and like starting something new, this idea of just jump in, you're not going to know everything, mess it up, get in, play around, figure out what you are trying to do, see what works, and learn from other people also, and get feedback, and just keep that learning cycle going. But there's definitely there's sometimes pressure put on people to be like, oh, you shouldn't make mistakes, or also, even if you're a really good learner or, quote unquote, good learner, like people have all kinds of different learning experiences as girls, as boys, as whatever they're categorized, for different, the way they learn. And people can sometimes be afraid to make mistakes, even if they're like, quote unquote, really good in school, because then it's like, oh, I should be really good at this. I look stupid if I make a mistake. I'm supposed to be the really smart one, I don't want people to see me make a mistake, but like, I think just, just learning from people in the scientific community about the importance of mistakes and the helpfulness of mistakes, actually. Not to mention the research that people have done on like how your brain literally, responds to mistakes, like what, mistakes help your brain grow and things like that, So I think just jumping in and overcoming your own fear of messing up and just keep going.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. So we are closing this, and we have a few questions. The first one is, what's still really challenging for you and Right Stick Women team? Still so challenging, or roadblocks do you still face?
I think that one thing is, I'll have to come back to the basic issue, which is funding, but it's not the most glamorous issue, but it's important. And when you're in the position of starting a nonprofit, you're kind of like, this is really part of the job that has to be done, and we all have to do it and figure out how we're going to resource our projects, basically. So I'd say getting our projects funded right now. But we're at the point now where we've done all our research, we've done some pilot project, we know what we want to do, and now we're like ready to approach partners and start that next phase. We were lucky, actually, because we already got recognized by the International Telecommunications Union. They have this Equals in Tech Awards that they give to organizations who are trying to advance women in tech. And we were a finalist in leadership in technology this last year. And I was like amazed, because I was like, well, we just started. This is pretty incredible. Look what we did with like very few resources. So I'm like, imagine what we can do with resources. So I'm actually pretty optimistic, because I do think what we're doing is something a little bit different to approaching how we can help women enjoy better equality in tech. And I was so happy that was recognized, because like my team worked really hard. They put in volunteer hours, and like so many people have actually volunteered. We had between like 50 and 100 people volunteering already, who just give their time. And that's both from anything from like marketing to coaching girls in Python. So I'm just so grateful that all that work, like not just of our team, but like also the whole volunteers, like everyone got recognized that way. So I'm really proud. But so yes, we have a big challenge, but I'm optimistic because I think we're ready for the next step. So
wonderful. Yeah. So I'm curious to ask you, since you have this expertise, where innovation comes from. When you look to cis kids or girls, just where do you see this innovation comes from?
It's such an interesting question. I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking it's funny, because in some ways I actually go back to being really grateful to all the people who have gone before us. I'm like, oh, our ancestors figured out how to, set a fire, and I'm like, it must have been pretty difficult for them. Probably people were like, what are you doing? Stop that. Or, that's dangerous. Like, ow, that hurts. It's burning, but like, I go back and I'm like really grateful to like all of our ancestors really who have gone before us and like taken the trouble to figure something out, that works. And I think now we're in the situation where we're like, let's figure out what we can do for the next generations and like see what we can leave them, hopefully some really good ideas, and like hopefully we can leave the world in as good a condition as possible. That's a big challenge, like, during our lifetimes. But where does it come from? I mean, it comes with like everything that has gone before, and I guess a spark. I don't know where the spark comes from. The spark to, do something a little bit differently. Like, oh, someone was like, I have a stick, I have a rock.
Yeah.
Let me think about that. And like, whatever, I have 2 rocks. Let me, whatever they did to make the fire, the first fire, whatever. Someone gets a spark from somewhere, and I don't know where that comes from, but just maybe, I don't know if it's taking things we already know and just shaking them up in a paper bag and looking at them in a new way, or I don't know if it just comes from, I don't know where.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that all the people who had all the good ideas they've had. I hope we can just add good ideas.
I can't agree more as well. I think we have to think about that, deeply. So I think it was this point. And do you think ego is important for you sometimes? The ego.
Yeah, I'm not a psychologist, so I wouldn't even know necessarily like the proper definition of ego. But I don't know. I think that is ego important? I think if you're something that came to mind when I hear that word is I think sometimes you have to take yourself less seriously, but then I think also other times you need to take yourself more seriously. And I think it's actually like, I think there's like a coin you could flip, like on a certain day, if you're dealing with something and you're getting frustrated, maybe that's a good time to take yourself less seriously. Be like, is there something I can laugh about? I don't know. But then again, if you're like, should I do this? I've got this idea. It's kind of different. I don't know. No one's done that. It's weird. We're like training girls how to program robots and human rights. That's weird. Is like anyone doing that? No. Okay. Should I do that? I think then, but I think sometimes you take yourself more serious and be like, actually, that's an idea. It's kind of a good idea, and give your credit. Give your idea a little credit and give yourself some credit. And like I think the ideas that you write down or you put to the side, I think you need to also respect your own ideas sometimes. Like, oh, that's actually that's a pretty good idea. But then again, you can go the other way and like get so wrapped up in your life and your thinking and be like, oh, this is the most important thing ever. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not, but so then I think you need to like, I don't know, laugh at yourself a little bit. I think it's a weird mix, if you think about it. Now, just to add, like, if you had like I don't know, if it's like if someone could just hand you a card and you could know which way it should be facing, like, should I take myself more seriously right now or less seriously? Like, that would be helpful. But anyway, no, you have to figure that out, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Yeah, I can't agree more with that. Yeah. Then I'm curious about your aspiration in life, maybe in terms of, the right stick woman, for example, the aspiration you have.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. It's really interesting. I think that for myself as a person, really, I think I want to be a good family member. I want to do what I can for the next generations, really. I think that right now I really want to pass on everything I've learned, I hope. How I can basically reproduce in an efficient way the learning that I've been able to get on like how to better protect human rights. So I kind of want to pass all that on, and I want to help other people find ways to share their stories and like change the things that they want to change. Really, it's for me, it's about connecting with other people and helping them connect with their rights and helping them get what they need to change. I really enjoy that. It's actually fun, in a way. It's sometimes it's kind of, distressing or sad to hear people's situations, and, people have, really awful situations in many cases. But basically empowering somebody to like tap into things that they already know and give them a little bit more information about like, a minimum to ask for sometimes. Sometimes people just don't know what they can ask for. And I love sharing that information to be like, no, actually, at least based on international standards, like, it can look like this, and, you shouldn't necessarily ask for less. And and also other people might be kind of upset if you ask for less because they've been trying to get more for a long time. So like, let's all talk together. Yeah. But my aspirations, I'd say just to be happiness on a day-to-day basis. That's pretty basic. But I'm super grateful to be healthy and alive. And this year, that's actually no small potatoes, as the expression goes. So everyone, I would hope the same for everybody listening to this, whenever and wherever you are. Hope this finds you in the same good health and happiness. But on a daily basis, I would say that. And with Rights Tech, I would say just taking the next step. Like we're basically scaling up, to put it in 2 words. We are at the point to scale up now. So I am super excited about doing that. If I can mention one other thing about the scaling up we want to do. So far, we've been using robots from Poppy Station, who I also want to mention because they also have put me in touch with you. And but so we're a member of Rights Tech Women is a member of the Poppy Station network based in France, which uses the Poppy Ergo Junior robot. And we use that robot. And we actually borrowed robots from them. And basically they're educational robots that are open source and also open hardware. So like anybody can make them themselves by going to the website at poppystation.org. And they're robots that have been developed specifically for educational purposes, so that they work really well in the classroom, and they can be used either with like the drag and drop programming or with Python and Jupyter notebooks. So we've been using those, and we trained already over 400 girls using those robots locally, and we're hoping to scale up and do more trainings for girls. So we basically started training though on robotics, but also when we do these trainings for girls, we do training on human rights as well. So this is what's very different, is that we are bringing these together in the same, we call them hybrid trainings. It's kind of different. It's like training people on programming and also human rights, and like how programming is part of your human rights now. Like it sounds different, but it kind of is, because it's now part of science education, and to have relevant jobs in the future, it's like part of the language that it's really helpful to know. So basically, we're kind of telling girls, like, go for it. This is part of your education. It's not like a favor that anybody owes you. It's like you should be, I hope, learning some programming in school because it's going to be really helpful. And basically, how can we help get you that access and like help talk to people and help, basically get people resources that they need where they don't have them. So that every country can teach programming and to girls also. But even here in Switzerland, for example, one girl came up to me at a training and was like, there's a robotics club, but my teacher doesn't like me and I can't go. And she's like, it's all boys, and I'm like, give him my number. Here's my information. And I'm like, give him this handout right here. And it's like, let's talk about this. So, but but basically there's a lot of work to do, like we were talking about before, but this idea that it's like not for girls somehow, I think we really need to change that. Also with robotics, I think, and maybe in particular, but I don't know. You would know more about that. Yeah,
I really admire what you do. That's we can go like that, and even for future of education, I think that's something very inspiring to combine human rights and robotics. So, thanks for doing that. Thank you.
And thanks for saying that. It's literally fun. This part of the secret is I also get to play with the robots. So I'm like, don't tell anyone, but this is actually kind of secretly, it's like a secret and wide open, but I'm like, I actually get to keep working in human rights, but I get to learn and play with robots. Send us your robots, we can use them. But we want to help set up our programs for robotics and girls in 33 countries that we have selected based on data around the world. So we're super excited to start doing that. But so if people want to contact us, they can also reach us. If our info, it's like info@rightstech.org. If anyone wants to reach out to us, but
wonderful, yeah,
yeah. But we're grateful because actually we had these robots from Poppy Station, and that's helped us actually get started, and just, as I said, jump in and even, you know, basically start trying out our activities and seeing what works well, what do we need to learn, and before we scale that up.
Yeah,
so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
but we don't have soft robotics at this point.
Oh, still early, but hopefully we can have something. Yeah, there's some tutorial for kids, but yeah, I think it would be also fun to have something for soft robotics. But still, yeah, there's some tutorial for kids. Yeah, and soft robotics toolkit. It's called by some colleagues done. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting indeed. So we have 2 questions left. The first one is, what are the most important quality you have gained? You have moved a lot. You have, and I think I admire people who are moving around. Yeah, it's not everyone is able to do that, but I think there's a lot of purpose for that and gaining a lot of qualities. If you can tell us what could be the most important quality you have gained while working in rights equipment and also moving. Yeah,
I guess a better attitude towards debugging. I mean, certainly in the human rights work that I've done, you know, I've had to be really persistent, working in a multilateral environment, like working at the UN with different countries. That's been wonderful, actually, like working with colleagues from around the world who always give me great ideas and make my work better. Yeah, I guess just, I think starting to also think of myself as a tech learner, that was actually a change I made as an adult lawyer, because I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like learning programming. I'm like, you know, this is kind of weird. Like, but it's actually really fun. And I think that a lot of women would actually be in a good situation if they started to think of themselves as a tech learner. Because I think that you're not like born perfect at it. You're not like, you don't have to be the, you know, a certain stereotype of like what a programmer looks like, you know, necessarily, you know. So I think just a mental attitude shift of like accepting that I'm also like a tech learner, and tech is actually belongs to me too, you know, just like it belongs to everybody. I think that might be the most thing, like on a very personal level. But yeah. The other thing I think is just continuing, like breaking things into smaller pieces, and I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah, and good advice as well. Yeah. And lastly, what was the best advice was given to you and was a life changing you have received? Yeah.
That's a good question. I do think it wasn't actually direct, but literally, I'm going to go back to it. But like, make mistakes, especially as a founder. But also make mistakes and change your mind. Also, like, let people change your mind. It's like before doing advocacy, my job was literally to try to change people's minds constantly. And it's interesting to see that in a board, you know, working constantly with other professionals who are wonderful. But like I always let people change my mind if you know, we have a discussion, and luckily they have better ideas than me sometimes. And you know, getting feedback and being open to that, and like just basically like, you know, taking good group decisions and listening. So I guess losing some of the fear and keeping your mind open.
Yeah, that's really life valuable advice. So I can't I want to say thank you very much for what you're doing, Ellen. I think you're an inspiring human being, and what you do at your Right Sick Women with your team, I think that's something we deeply appreciate it. So keep going, and
thank you.
Thanks a lot for what you do. Thank you. I really appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is so much fun, and it's been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.